I am actually quite pro-rogue. Many women have a soft spot for what my great-aunt calls SH1Ts, but not in that way. What I am not in favour of is any Prime Minister proroguing or suspending Parliament in order to ram through a no deal without a confirmatory vote in the Commons. This would make a mockery of all the Brexiters' arguments that leaving the EU would restore us our sovereignty and allow Parliament to take back control. What utter guff. Businesswoman and activist Gina Miller is absolutely correct to reassemble her winning legal team to stop this. She said it a million times. She's not anti-Brexit. She's never tried to stop Brexit. But what she is very, very pro is Parliament having a say in what happens and a vote on the deal, as we are still just a parliamentary democracy. A PM proroguing would constitute an abuse of power, she says, and I agree. We are the home of the mother of parliaments, not some banana republic run by a tin pot dictator. MPs who respect mother should support Ms Miller.
Well, I actually think that what is the abuse of power is the fact that Parliament have done everything possible to have prevented us from actually executing properly, exiting the European Union. That's what I personally see as the abuse of power. And I think that the fact we're in this situation is so appalling. I have no words or time to get into it. But in terms of the Gina Miller latest threat of the case, the question needs to be, is it legal that whoever the next Prime Minister is can actually prorogue Parliament? And if the answer to that is yes, then I don't even understand why there should be a legal challenge. And it's that is kind of confusing me. Do I think that we should prorogue Parliament, take away the legal aspect, to get no deal through? It wouldn't be my preferred option, but I think it is fundamentally wrong that MPs would try and block a no deal, because actually what I think should happen is that we should be properly preparing for a no deal Brexit, and if that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do, and this stopping and blocking is wrong.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, Jonathan Sumption wrote a piece setting all this out. Prorogation is just a normal procedure that's become very exciting because it could be the one device the government has within its power at the moment in order to get through no deal without having to get through the last hurdle that Gina Miller set us, which was that Parliament had to vote the deal through in some way. Greg, what do you think?
John Major was quite interesting on it. He said...
Well, he's going to legal threat as well.
Yes, I think the idea of proroguing Parliament is utterly and totally unacceptable from any British parliamentarian or Democrat. If that were to happen, I think there would be a queue of people who would seek judicial review. I served in Parliament for over 20 years. I'm very proud to have done so. I have huge admiration for our parliamentary traditions. Yeah. I'm not going to stand by and see them disregarded in this fashion. And I think if they try to prorogue this thing through, I think there'll be people on the... I think there'll be massive demonstrations on the streets. And I think it's a very, very dangerous thing to try to do. I don't think they'll try to do it, if you want.
Should we just see Gina Miller setting out her stall where she claims she's not trying to stop Brexit? This is simply a matter of sovereignty.
God almighty.
We think that it's beyond the Prime Minister's powers because parliamentary sovereignty is actually the sort of jewel in the constitutional crown. And to bypass it, to close the doors of Parliament, we feel, from the advice and the case we've looked at, that the case law we've looked at, that would be beyond a Prime Minister's powers. It would be an abuse of his powers to close Parliament to get through or to not get through, or to limit the voice of the representatives that we all elect.
So the problem here is Parliament voted by a majority of 43 against no deal. So whoever that is Prime Minister is going to struggle to get a vote for no deal. Yeah. The problem we have is that we have a unwritten constitution, and this is going to put the Queen in an extremely difficult position and maybe having to decide whether this should be allowed or not, which is not what we should have in a parliamentary democracy. What do you think?
I agree. I completely agree with you, Rachel. I thought your intro was completely spot on, because what we need to decide is what take back control means. Does take back control mean parliamentary sovereignty, or does it mean that we put in a strongman and an autocrat? And I think that actually, if the Prime Minister, whoever that is, decides that a no deal is the only option, then the only thing to do is either a people's vote or a general election. If you want to push something through that you think the people want, give it to the people and let's see.
Nick, what do you think? Do you think that the next MP could
Gina
impose...
Gina Miller's not trying to stop Brexit.
Nick, can I just ask you a question about Gina Miller? I sat here one week and you told me that you completely changed your mind about Gina Miller. And you were a strong opponent and now you were a strong supporter.
It's tremendous the way she plays it, but let's pretend she's
ask you a question?
Not trying to stop Brexit.
I know that you and Michelle had your doubts, then you voted for Brexit. Everyone's doubled down. But do you think that it is right or constitutional or democratic that one man, necessarily, maybe with ministers, enforces a no-deal Brexit on the country without any approval, any popular approval at all?
Well, I would suggest perhaps the popular approval comes from 17.4 million people
who did not vote for no deal.
Did not vote for no deal.
That wasn't even a criteria. They voted to leave.
No, they
voted to leave.
Nick, they voted to leave in what was an advisory referendum, which was to again go to Parliament. Parliament said we didn't vote for that.
Then, Nick, then why would you have a problem us going back to just double check? Now we know what this thing is. That is exactly what they were voting for. Then surely you're confident that we would get the same result again.
Do you honestly think that will resolve anything by going back? What is the point? What is the point?
Because we know clearly what it is now.
Should we hear from someone who's likely by this time next week to be in a far more senior position regarding all of this than any of us? Speaking earlier this month, Boris Johnson.
17.4 million people voted to leave. It was a clear majority for leave. The MPs acknowledged that and they voted, MPs themselves voted overwhelmingly to trigger Article 50 and to come out of the EU. And now we're in a state where MPs seem still to be refusing to enact the mandate of the people.
And it's very difficult, Rachel, to argue with any of that because the MPs did vote to trigger Article 50 and the people did vote to leave.
And you know as well as I do that when the people voted to leave, they were told by the Vote Leave campaign that this would not mean leaving the customs union, this would not mean leaving the single market, this would not mean a crash in GDP.
This would mean 350 million for the NHS.
Right.
A lot of things we thought it was going to mean.
Every party that ever stands at a general election puts out a manifesto that's normally a pile of trash.
Are you saying that people knew they were being lied to?
And since then we've had a general election which more than 80% of people voted for parties that said they would respect the referendum results.
More people that voted for Remain parties.
No, let's get this right. They would respect the referendum result, which meant we left. It didn't mean that we crashed out. It didn't mean that we left with no deal.
I don't know why everyone keeps referring to exiting as with a no deal as crashing out, because actually, if people properly understood what exiting under WTO rules means, and they were able to understand and prepare and get ready for that, and if you could somehow have a transition period from both sides into that, it wouldn't be crashing out. And I do have to pick you up, Craig, when you say it was an advisory referendum. It was so clear on that pamphlet thing that we all received that the government would have implemented what we decided. It was black and white, and it really frustrates me.
As a businesswoman, can I ask you one question? Front page of the of Times today, no deal will send Britain into recession. That's the Office of Budget Responsibility, which is an independent. As a businesswoman, would you vote for something, if you had a vote, that would see a crash in inward investment, GDP falling 4 to 8% year on year,
but on what basis
pound
is that gonna
sterling
happen?
weakening? Because it's not. It is happening.
Look at what's happening to the pound right now.
Manufacturing stalling, construction stalling.
It's called
as a businesswoman.
No, the uncertainty. The uncertainty is about the threat of leaving without a deal.
That's
why the pound's going down.
The uncertainty is because people haven't accepted the result and actually implemented something so that everybody knows where they stand. That's what I think.
They heard it all before in 2016.
Which is over the cliff.
Anyway, if you're
what do we think happens?
If you're a Brexiteer, you'll be falling asleep now with this lot trying to convince you to remain, I'm sure. So, you're watching The Pledge on Sky News. And up next, can you really trust what you hear and see on TV?